Yep. Well, we're not quite there yet. We'll probably get to mass religious conversion sooner or later. But
Or
that,
Hunter Thompson saying, "Don't do drugs, kids."
well, I was just gonna say that's a perfect lead into the ending of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And as much as I love this book, the ending has always bummed me out a little bit. It okay. Well, should we just sort of sum up for people what happens in the end, or
Well, why don't you sum it up, Matt? Since I finished the book 2 weeks ago, right before your concussion, and I'm like, okay.
Well, essentially, what happens is that a lot of their energy, they get all stoked to do this, to cover this district attorney's convention. Thompson and his attorney, and we have an actual picture. I think it appeared in Spy at one point. It was in Rolling Stone for sure. This picture of Hunter and Acosta in Las Vegas during this time period. One exists, which we'll show at some point. But
I love that photo, Matt. Somebody used AI to put our faces on that once. Remember?
Did they really?
Yeah, the one at the table.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, there it is. There's Hunter and Acosta, and and you can. There's even a scene in the book that you can tell. There's a line about what kind of a maniac wears one black glove. This kind of came up in an ironic way when Michael Jackson became famous again. Became famous because he used to wear the one black glove. But this is actually what they look like during the Vegas sojourn.
Matt, can you pose like Hunter and I'll pose like Acosta? Okay, right. So there is a resemblance.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's got a hat on. No, Hunter's got a hat on in that one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I can't do the Hunter voice. Have you tried it? It's really hard.
No, I revere him too much to try to imitate him in any way. Every time I catch myself trying to be Gonzo in a piece, I go like, "Don't touch it, dude."
I know. It's an affectation. Every young sort of journalist, well, for a while anyway, they went through that phase of using, Thompson-esque words. "Goddamned" is one that you have to watch out for, right?
What they look like here is the two hardest living chess players in history.
But everything goes wrong for them at this district attorney's convention, and the end of the book kind of turns out to be a colossal bummer. Like they were so up, and it's like every drug guy, you are so up in the beginning, you just can't wait to go charging into whatever happens, but it always ends in a dark place, in a room where you're just trying to mellow out and find something on TV that doesn't scare you or whatever it is. And that's kind of what happens in this book. Like they have one last moment where something funny happens. A maid walks in on the attorney, naked and vomiting into his into the toilet, and they pretend to recruit her as an informant for the narc squad or something like that, and they give her the password, like if somebody says to you, "One hand washes the other," you just respond, "I fear nothing," right? And it's a very funny scene, but the rest of it is just it's a long series of essays not a long series of essays. It's a series of essays by Thompson on his way out of town about how just things aren't the same anymore, about how the energy from the 60s is gone, and he's lost, right?
It's
Doesn't
another tequila sunrise,
right, exactly.
or in the vein of Peter Fonda in Easy Rider, we blew it, man. We blew it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And he has a great line about you know, why had they done so many things? Like, first, we've already talked about the Neutrogena soap bars.
I love that, because everybody who ever first saw Neutrogena soap as an adult wanted to steal it, and they steal the most of it.
They just fill a whole back seat of a gigantic convertible with it. But then he goes and he lists all the other stuff that's in the wreckage of one of the rooms that they stay in. What kind of addict would need all these coconut husks and crushed honeydew rinds? Would the presence of junkies account for all these uneaten French fries, these puddles of glazed ketchup on the bureau? Maybe so, but why all this booze and these crude pornographic photos ripped out of pulp magazines, like Whores of Sweden and orgies in the Casbah that were plastered on the broken mirror with smears of mustard that had dried to a hard yellow crust, and all these signs of violence, these strange red and blue bulbs and shards of broken glass embedded in the wall plaster because they had bought Christmas lights for some reason. Like, there's all these things that happen in between the scenes that they only mention in passing.
But that's an interesting point, and that's I think important point about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is that the only part that it inevitably doesn't include, but does include spiritually, are the blackouts, and you get the feeling toward the end of the book that he's started to catch up with his blackouts. And that is the sadness of it. He looks around, time has passed, events have occurred that he has no memory of, pleasures have been enjoyed that he can't remember being pleasures. And that is his final metaphor for the last decade or whatever period in America, that suddenly we look around and we see the wrappers, we see the spilled things, we see the party favors, and nothing's sadder than the room where a party was that you can't remember.
Yeah, and it's really a metaphor for the whole 60s, right? Like,
yes,
it's a great thing. It's an energizing thing to have this feeling of living like there's no tomorrow. But the problem is there is a tomorrow, right? Like, ultimately, you either end up dead or you wake up and you're just, old and have bills and ex-wives, and that's kind of what's happening in this book, is that he's waking up after all the madness, and it's just a bunch of wreckage that doesn't mean anything, and nothing got fixed, and he's not sure that anything was accomplished other than a monumental sort of orgy of consumption, which is extremely funny in itself. It's worth it, right?
Well, it's sad that Hunter wasn't around to collect a production credit on the most obvious ripoff of this book, which is The Hangover, the movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
And my brilliant, I thought, contention about the book, because I try to think of something new to say especially about books that people think they have completely digested, is that this is, on this reading, for me, a book about materialism, about consumerism, about just putting stuff in you and using stuff. Because remember, it's all about Cadillacs of different colors. It's about, brands.
Oh yeah, the
brands
Mercedes,
of alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
Neutrogena soap. I mean, the reason that sticks with me is because it's an image of, like, consumerist lust run amok. Look, there's clear soap that looks like it's made of honey. Let's get hundreds of bars of it and put them in our Cadillac. while taking all these drugs. In the future, all these drugs that Hunter took will have brand names and be produced by Pfizer under special,
Right.
conditions that say we've removed the molecules. I mean, pot or weed already has got brand consciousness, but legal pot, I mean. But in those days, just because his pot and his LSD and his this or that doesn't have a corporate mark on it, it's still consumerism in a way.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what the book is finally protesting, celebrating, indulging in, and finally skeptically mourning and casting feelings of desperate horror toward. Like, what is this wreckage and this vanity of vanities, like the Ecclesiastes preacher in the Bible, I've been up, I've been down, I did this. There's a time to eat, there's a time to drink, there's a time to celebrate, but now it's all over.
But in the end, it's so worth it. Like the journey is so much fun, and like I always compare this book and Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which is it's much more of a journalism book. It's not nearly as fun as this one or as taut, right? But to me they're similar to books like The Trial or The Castle, where there's a Kafka's narrators are these hyper energetic clownish figures who are in search of something, never find it, and always choose the wrong door to open, never get where they want to go, and end up failing. But the story is kind of worth it in the end. It's the journey that matters, right? In both the Kafka story and in the Thompson stories. And this is the ultimate salute to like American consumerism and to everything that's available to do in this country. As a consumer, drive fast cars, do drugs, women, wreck hotel rooms, run up credit, all that stuff. They do it to the max. They have a great time, or they sometimes have a great time, and it's written up gorgeously. Does it mean anything in the end? No, not really, but it's still worth it. It's still beautiful.
Another great job for AI would be to recreate that hotel room from the scene as he describes it. Yeah, in general, I'd like to see AI do that every once in a while, because there's sometimes a page in a book that I'd like to see come to life. But you know what? I just reflected on something. Something that Hunter Thompson curiously was not often accused of being? A conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yeah.
And yet he was one of the most paranoid beings who ever lived. His paranoia is all over this book. I mean, there's a reason he uses the term fear and loathing. That is paranoia. I'm afraid something horrible is going to happen. And yet, by putting all his paranoia up front in his reportage, in his literature, he actually made us think that he was a shrewd realist underneath, which he kind of was about politics. Like, whenever you would read him in a straight political analysis of a convention or something, you were like, this guy knows how the world works. But oddly, like I say, it's the people who look straight who get accused of conspiracy theorizing. Hunter was actually, I think, a suspected normie underneath, or a suspected guy who wanted a suspected patriot.
Yeah, and you believed him. He didn't put on an act in his narration. He wasn't pretending to be anyone. That's why his books were so accessible to so many different types of people. In the same way that Twain's books are.
But he was a moralist about politics and politicians.
He absolutely was. But there are even a lot of conservatives and right wingers enjoyed his books even during that time period, right? Because he made so much fun of himself, in addition to making fun of Nixon. But and by the way, he also gave it to the Democrats very hard during that time period. I mean, like, some of the people who came out the worst in his writing were people like Ed Muskie, right, or John Lindsay, or who's the other one I'm thinking of from Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail? Hubert Humphrey. Yeah, who
the Happy Warrior
rolled, and he rolled and crawled through a plate glass window. I forget what the line was, but Hunter was so open, and he was so good at disclosing his own vulnerabilities on the page and everything, that it's just touching the way that this middle-aged person. By the way, this is also a book about middle age. It's clearly that too, right? Because he's no longer young, right?
How old is he?
I mean, he's what, mid-30s here, mid to late 30s, I guess, right? No, but he's no longer no longer like Woodstock young. You know what I mean? Right, he's not. Right. He's a 6'5" bald guy who's got very serious health issues, and it's not the beginning of the run for him. It's the hill is starting to turn downward for him. And how does he handle it? He handles it by going all out, you know what I mean? Which is kind of the perfect way to do it, I think. And I don't know. I love this book. I have nothing but affection for the way this book was written. And also, I'm curious to know, and we only have a few minutes, but how do you characterize this book? As fiction, nonfiction? Like, what is it for you?
In any real practical sense, it's fiction, okay? Because if indeed he's as wasted as he describes, he would have had to recreate most of these scenes. You know what I mean? Not only that, I happen to know, because I sort of looked into it, that this book, collapses a lot of things that maybe happened in Las Vegas or maybe not in Las Vegas into one narrative. So it's fiction, but it's fiction from a guy who had decided not to be a novelist pretty early in his career, right? I mean, didn't he write a novel right at the beginning?
Rum Diary or
yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And who decided that events were so weird and that American reality was so surreal in itself that he, the distinction had collapsed. Why should he obey it? But it's fiction. It's fiction starring a real person, their real mind, their real sensibility, and probably 80% of events that you couldn't make up. The reason that there is a lot of nonfiction, as Mark Twain said, the problem with fiction is it has to be plausible.
Right.
And the ironies of getting to Las Vegas on wasted to find out you're at a district attorney's conference or whatever, all those things are too good to be true. But the way I would finally classify the book is as it's not really a memoir, because it's not full enough and full of context, and it's about a spree. Memoirs attempt to sort of account for how you got where you are and show all the stages. It is a cautionary tale. It's like the books that they used to write back in Europe before we had novels and so on, that would talk about some horrible thing that happened to make children not want to do it, or secretly would make them want to do it. Thank you, Christopher. I hope you're like a very educated person, because you agreeing with me makes me feel good. And I like to think that's the result of study. It's a cautionary tale. It's almost a religious tract, in the sense that it's about going too far, or it's Dante. It's a trip to hell. It's an account of a trip to hell. In classical literary terms, you call these books trips to the underworld. And they always follow the same pattern. Here I am going into the underworld. The acid was hitting outside of Barstow. Here I am deep in the underworld, and here I come out onto the surface, having fought the devils and maybe lost a little bit to them, but I'm back with mankind. So it's a trip to the underworld. It's a cautionary tale. It's a modern folk tale.
Yeah, it's Perseus or Theseus or whatever it is, but just the American version in a convertible, high on every conceivable drug, descending into the very maw of hell with every narc in the country, blasted out of your mind, committing felonies left and right, getting away with it, and then somehow returning back to the surface to report to the world, a little bit diminished, but it's
like Virgil, like the Aeneid, like Dante, or Virgil, who's Dante's guide in the Inferno. And all these books have one thing in common. They're about being grateful you're still alive. And frankly, I think Hunter Thompson must have woken up many a morning, surprised and grateful that he was still alive.
Absolutely. And there were one of the viewers was just asking, saying something about how he didn't have health problems until he was later. No, he writes constantly, even when he was younger, about how he went to doctors and they told him, hey, when you stop sweating this much, then come to me, right? Like
that's in the book, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like his drug intake was so awesome, and I think we both have friends who knew him during periods when he was having trouble getting from place to place and doing certain things. This was a person with a deeply serious habit, but I just think that this book is like the ultimate example. Like every writer, some of them can turn it on every single time. Some of them only hit strike gold once. Like to me, Catch-22 was just an example of a writer who just got hot and on a heater and just kept going, right?
And who I think, in Heller's case, spent the rest of his career baffled about how he did it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But this is the one where a guy who was great, normally, right? I mean, almost everything that Hunter wrote as journalism is like priceless. It's gonna last hundreds of years anyway, just because of how crisp the prose was. But this book was him, when he was on an unbelievable hot streak, and he just hit the exact perfect theme at the exact right time in his life, and it came out like a jewel. I think even Twain would be jealous of this book in a way. I mean,
one of Twain would have been jealous, and he would have understood it. He would have understood it as a fable. He wrote these kind of fables. This trip to the underworld is interesting, but I'm going to say one other thing about it. At the end, I think Hunter was cautioning America about something. He wasn't just drawing you and seducing you and displaying his prowess. He was doing all that too. But at the end, I think he was really wanting to say something. And I think it was, the orgy ain't going to last. We're lucky to be alive on this planet. And every time you go so close to the fire, you increase your chances of never coming out of it. And I think he was worried about this is the early 70s. I think he was worried about America that had not learned, had gone through this party, but hadn't learned from the party and was going to repeat the mistakes. I think he was saying, like, this was enough. We fully delved into this question, and here's the answer, and we don't have to keep doing it.
Yep. And at the end, he also has a brutal assessment of his own profession. Why bother with newspapers if this is all they offer? Agnew was right. Excuse the antiquated language. The press is a gang of cruel faggots. Journalism is not a profession or a trade. It is a cheap catch-all for fuck-offs and misfits, a false doorway to the backside of life, a filthy, piss-ridden little hole nailed off by the building inspector, but just deep enough for a wino to curl up from the sidewalk and masturbate like a chimp in a zoo cage. So that's how he feels.
And Twain felt the exact same thing. You know, he said, if you've ever read, the best thing is to be uninformed rather than misinformed by reading the paper. I mean, Twain has having been a journalist, had as much contempt. And it's funny that we haven't taken that to heart, because Matt, you just touched on something. What it really is, and also is a extreme satire of every junket that every journalist has ever gone on.
Oh, well, that's true too. Yeah.
It was like this ultimate English farce where, you open a bedroom door and you see like the prime minister and the whole parliament having sex together. He was saying, like, this is what journalists, those people you see on TV, these people who have bylines, this is a worst case scenario for what they're really doing before they come out and tell you about the story.
Yeah, before they put the tie on and give you the dignified account. Right. This is what they're like behind closed doors. But this is what we're all like.
He was the last journalist in some ways, because he fully and finally and memorably exposed the fact that backstage, it's not that we're making it up, it's just that we're lost.
Exactly. Anyway, great book. And I'm glad to share it with you. Thanks everybody for being so patient with me last week, and thank you, Walter, again for the same thing. And I will try to stay off higher ground for the near future. But I'm hearing that there will be lots of interesting stuff happening this week, so we should have an interesting show later this week. But see you later, and thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.